Tonight in 9 News, shrine disgrace. Anti-vax protesters desecrate our most sacred landmark. Tear gas and rubber bullets fired to clear the mob. Melbourne shaken to its core the moment our city was rocked by a 5.9 magnitude earthquake. SES crews helped Melbourne families pick up the pieces after the shock. Teachers and school staff required to get the COVID jab to help get kids back to class. Scott Morrison's marathon day of diplomacy in New York. And breaking news from Perth, a new COVID case puts the grand final on edge.
This is Melbourne's 9 News with Peter Hitchener.
Good evening. Marauding anti-vax protesters have taken the disgraceful step of swarming the Shrine of Remembrance. Heavily armed police surrounded the mob, moving in with rubber bullets and tear gas, continuing Melbourne's dismal week of violence. Crime reporter Lana Murphy.
On the steps of our most sacred site, a battle of beliefs ending with open fire.
They're throwing stuff now and, OK, they're shooting. They're now shooting.
The pilgrimage to consecrated land pitting protesters against police. The tense standoff erupting, spreading mayhem through the streets. Canisters and rubber bullets dispersed the crowd that held the Shrine of Remembrance hostage for more than 4 hours.
They'll push us to the city!
They're still coming through.
Before they ran riot through the CBD. Draped in flags and professing patriotism, up to 1,000 men and women occupied the St Kilda Road landmark from 1 p.m, making odes to themselves.
The same freedoms that our grandparents died and fought and died for. That's all we're here for. We're here to fight for something. Yeah, we're here to fight for freedom of rights, anti-vax. We want our jobs back. We don't want the mandate.
They ran riot near the Eternal Flame, taunting police who were initially outnumbered. But the riot squad eventually closed ranks, surrounding them from all sides. Demonstrators were determined to hold their ground.
This is unbelievable. Here's the disrespect from the police, ready to shoot at people.
Stick together!
The digger would not be responded to by that. We're actually fighting for the same thing that our forefathers fought for, freedom of choice.
But not even veterans on their side could see the sense.
Can you just respect the shrine and can you stand down from there, please? Like, really?
This is the most un-Australian thing I've ever seen. And to behave in a manner like this at this place and to dishonour what generations of us have done to protect our country is unacceptable.
We are not here to cause trouble. We're here to take back the freedoms that were earned for us.
Their actions drawing the ire from the highest office.
None of us are above the law. And it's important that at a time like this, I know it is difficult when there are lockdown restrictions that have been put in place.
It capped off a morning of mayhem with police chasing protesters armed with rocks across the city. The group of around 100 at times splintering, prompting a game of catch me if you can at the hands of specialist police.
Look over here, they're going into oncoming traffic. Every other car on the road has been forced to move over as police try and get a grip on this group of protesters that is just continually growing.
Entire intersections were brought to a standstill as walls of officers tried to rein in the crowd, far from the smooth plan of attack laid out by the Chief Commissioner.
This protest can't be allowed to occur again.
Victoria Police maintained it would change tactics today and use every weapon available to them. Some activists were shot by rubber bullets and left with welts.
Absolutely disgusted.
But it failed to quell the red-hot fury present in this rapidly growing group. In a bid to disarm the tech-savvy crowd, aircraft, including the news helicopter, were grounded after the Civil Aviation Safety Authority granted a request from Victoria Police.
Look, at the end of the day, there has to be an endpoint to something like this. Let's hope that common sense prevails. Let's hope that maybe perhaps once, for the first time in a few days, we see some common sense and some clear thinking from this group that have been acting really like sheep.
But the chants said it all. These people will be back, the top brass confirming it's not a crowd of angry tradesmen, instead mostly freedom marchers who have seen at every protest this year. Lana Murphy, 9 News.
Live to Adam Hegarty, who's been at the shrine for us all day. Adam, what's the situation?
Well, Pete, an extraordinary change here this evening. You can see the steps do have people on them, but among the people I've spoken to there are veterans from the Hawthorn RSL, and they said to me, we will not let our house be dirtied in this manner. If we have a look around here, these are the lines where police had police lines all day. They dispersed from there only the past couple of minutes, obviously determining that it is now safe to go home because these protesters won't come back, and of course the shrine is intact as the RSL vets clean it. The eternal flame obviously still burning. To have a look at the vision today, look, being here, it was extraordinary. You've got police on one side who clearly after 4 hours, they said enough is enough, and it took them 20 minutes to disperse the crowd. Sadly, Pete, protesters, when you talk to them, they will say that it's police who showed that force. So unfortunately, we suspect they'll be back again tomorrow.
Adam Hegarty, thanks for that report. Aftershocks could shake Victoria for weeks to come after a record-breaking earthquake rocked the state this morning. Buildings crumbled and babies were snatched from their cribs in our biggest tremor since European settlement. Laura Turner reports.
A rude awakening, so powerful it shook the earth.
Oh my God.
The magnitude 5.9 quake taking a wall to the ground at Betty's Burgers on Chapel Street.
Oh, this is
and inside homes, pure panic. The quake shaking the shelves in a Campbellfield chemist and the 3AW studio in Docklands.
Have we just had an earth tremor?
Right. The building shaking live on air.
Jesus, this is quite disturbing.
It is actually. It's
yeah.
Oh my God.
On the Westgate Bridge.
Holy oh, this is scary. Everyone's stopping.
And much closer to the epicentre near the high country town of Lucola, the ski fields shook at Mount Buller. Snowboarders and skiers whooshing right through an earthquake.
Looked up, clear sky, thought it was a helicopter, and then realised I think it might have been something a bit bigger.
Largest recorded in Victoria since European settlement.
Which ran 10 kilometres deep.
I thought I should have dived under the table.
And in the CBD...
Oh my God! Oh my God! It's... No.
It rocked apartment buildings.
Pretty sure that was an earthquake. Did you feel it too?
Even homemade buildings.
Yeah, she's all right? The house is shaking!
Melburnians in lockdown shaken from their beds. At Tullamarine, cars shook in their driveways as families sought an escape.
I was asleep and I woke up to my bed rocking, and I've run out the lounge room, my fish tank aquarium, the water was going over the edges.
Grabbed my jacket, grabbed my shoes, ran out. I've even grabbed the wrong glasses because I thought it was going to collapse.
And in the southeast, a bottle shop rocking at Hallam. The tremors reverberating through the state's northeast.
R5 is going to be your safest option to get out.
Right up to Benalla.
We've just had an earthquake in Benalla. This is the damage we've got in the shop.
Mildura, Malakuta, or in the west of the state in Portland. We also know that people have acknowledged or felt this earthquake in Adelaide, Tasmania and up into New South Wales.
Magnitude 5.8 occurred in Mansfield area this morning at approximately 9:15 a.m. This was recently revised from 6.0.
This record-making event didn't cause any serious injuries, just a dose of shock.
I reckon an earthquake here or something on air. Our building is literally shaking.
To a state that's surely had enough.
Like an earthquake.
Laura Turner, 9 News.
The wall above a Chapel Street burger shop was one of the most significant quake casualties, with bricks and awnings smashing onto the footpath. The SES received dozens of calls for help, with heritage homes and older buildings bearing the brunt of the tremor. More from Stephanie Anderson.
It came without warning, leaving rubble in its wake.
Yes. Oh my God.
Betty's Burgers in Windsor shaken more than most by the tremor, bricks tumbling from the facade, an awning destroyed, left dangling over the footpath.
I'm absolutely gobsmacked. I can't believe the impact.
Absolutely shook. I live next door to this building and the whole house shook. Mirrors fell.
Staff weren't due to start until 10, so the restaurant was empty. A resident upstairs is believed to have escaped any injuries. Emergency services taping off a wide area to avoid anyone else coming too close.
Can't believe that we're in a situation like we are today, but good thing was no one was hurt. You can rebuild buildings, but you can't, rebuild lives.
It's quite sad, really. Wondering when I'll be getting my burgers. It might be a while now.
There was damage too at the Coles close by on Chapel Street. Power was cut to 35,000 properties statewide. In Kensington, it was a chimney that came crashing to the ground. First responders say heritage homes and buildings have been hardest hit by the quake. Will Kibbe had to call the SES to his house in Armidale.
And I just heard a huge bang. Came outside and found the top of my chimney had fallen off.
It smashed a huge hole in roof tiles on the way down, a temporary repair job, the best volunteers could do.
I'm just hoping they fix it before it rains because don't want water coming off through the roof and into the carpet.
More than 100 calls for help have had to be managed by the SES, 55 of them from residents in Metro Melbourne.
It was chimneys, it was facades. That older infrastructure is more temperamental to shaking.
And in the sideway of this Armidale home, there was an incredibly close call. An electrician was standing here at the fuse box after installing an oven for the homeowners when all of those bricks rained down from the chimney next door.
Very lucky. He's off to get his Tuts lotto.
An old brick chimney was to blame here too. Cracks and minor damage are part of the clean-up across Victoria. It's another hit on a hard week, but luckily only inconvenient when it could have been much worse.
That had occurred under one of our more urban and populated areas, we could be seeing quite a different result.
Steph Anderson's in Windsor tonight, and the clean-up there is going to take a while, Steph.
It certainly is, Pete, but it is well and truly underway here this evening. I'm going to step out of the shot so my cameraman can show you. This is the wall that was smashed during this morning's earthquake, and as you can see, we've got a couple of workers up there in a cherry picker, and they're actually taking those bricks out by hand in an effort to try and make it stable. Now, we know structural engineers will have to come and assess this site, which is home to 3 different hospitality businesses, one of them being Betty's Burgers. I spoke to management there this afternoon. They've been told to prepare to be closed for as long as 5 months. We obviously know that there's going to be a significant clean-up job still to go here, but it's important to note tonight that this section of Chapel Street and also Green Street, where I'm standing, remain closed to all trams and traffic, Pete. So if this is part of your essential travel, you need to factor that in.
Stephanie Anderson, thank you for that. Despite the extensive damage, few injuries have been reported, but there is at least one man in hospital. Live to Elizabeth Moss in Frankston. Lizzie, what can you tell us?
Well, Pete, paramedics were called around 9:45 to the Mount Eliza Bowling Club. There, we're told a man in his 70s was making sure that a weather shelter on the property was secure. Of course, when that 5.9 magnitude earthquake has come through, it has knocked the props off that weather shelter. It's come crashing down and injured this man. He was taken to hospital with upper body injuries. Tonight, Pete, he remains in a stable condition here in hospital, and WorkSafe is now making inquiries into the incident.
Elizabeth Moss reporting. The earthquake has left many scratching their heads. Why Melbourne? Why now? Here to answer some of those questions, Lavinia Nixon.
Although Australia records an earthquake almost once every day, the more damaging quakes above a magnitude 5 typically occur only twice a year. Today's quake, with its epicentre near Locola, was a magnitude 5.9 at a depth of 10 kilometres, the strongest ever recorded in Victoria. The most powerful earthquakes occur in areas that lie along tectonic plates, such as Christchurch in New Zealand. But Australia sits in the centre of a plate, and the earthquakes we experience are known as intraplate. The constant movements of the boundaries that surround us cause a build-up of stress in the uppermost layer of the earth, the crust, and the energy from that stress is eventually released through earthquakes. The reason it was felt so far away from the epicentre is because the Australian crust is quite stiff, allowing seismic waves to travel more efficiently.
Lavinia Nixon. The Chief Health Officer has ordered mandatory vaccines for all teachers and anyone working in the education sector. The Education Union says the majority of its members are open to the mandate, but principals are concerned about how it'll be enforced. Justine Conway with today's developments.
Little more than a week into school holidays, a vaccine deadline is looming for teachers.
It will be a requirement of work for all staff at all schools.
Under Chief Health Officer orders, all school and early education staff, from teachers to administrators and cleaners, will need to have their first dose of vaccine by October 18. By November 29, they'll need to be fully vaccinated in order to continue working in the classroom.
If you do not have your second dose by the 29th of November, you cannot attend school.
Health officials say the mandate is in response to the heightened risk of virus transmission within schools.
The groups that have been put up as priority groups for vaccination and groups put up for mandatory vaccination are specifically based on the epidemiology of our outbreak.
The Education Union expects its close to 50,000 members to be compliant and follow the health order without any backlash.
I wouldn't expect that in our profession. There will certainly be members who will let us know their views, and that's appropriate. We always listen to what our members have to say.
More than 90,000 Victorians were vaccinated yesterday, bringing the percentage of those who've had their first dose to almost 75%, while more than 45% have now been fully vaccinated. According to a state government survey of 33,000 teachers, 75% are already fully vaccinated. While the unions are backing the public health orders, principals are concerned about becoming the enforcers.
It can result in fractured relationships at the school level. And we know that high functioning schools depend on solid and strong relationships. So we don't want principals against teachers.
In addition to the vaccine mandate, the Education Minister announced a $190 million package to improve school air ventilation. Under the plan, 51,000 air purification devices will be rolled out at all government and low-fee independent schools, the first batch to arrive in time for the start of Term 4. $60 million worth of grants will be available for schools to create more outdoor learning spaces under shade sails. And while it's yet to be approved by the TGA, there'll be a small trial of home antigen testing for school children and their families. It comes as the state recorded 628 new COVID cases in the last 24 hours and 3 deaths.
You can't eliminate risk. All of the things that I'm announcing today, Australian first, unprecedented, massive investment, all of those things are about lowering the risks.
Justine Conway, 9 News.
Although denied the chance to enjoy a premiership himself, Todd Viney is nervously hoping grand final success might yet come to his family. Son Jack will be among the Demons looking to break that 57-year drought, and as Tony Jones reports, Todd is willing a victory for some mates gone too soon.
On his property up past Romsey, Todd Viney has his hands full.
See the chickens?
And he wouldn't have it any other way.
To be able to have time with the granddaughter and his dog's been great company. When I'm up here by myself and he's running around with me on the motorbike, it's great fun.
Miller and Sebastian are spending time with their grandparents while Mum tries to move house back in Melbourne on her own, and Dad is over in the West trying to win a premiership. A former Demon himself, one that was very much an idol to so many Melbourne fans, Todd Viney is understandably nervous as Saturday night looms.
Probably just the passion that I love the club and love my son and hope he wins a premiership, something that I couldn't do.
Todd has been in Jack's corner all the way. Sometimes that corner might get a little cramped.
One of his great frustrations is being called Todd. People will out of the blue just say, "How you going, Todd?" and "It's great to see you, Todd," and that annoys the hell out of him.
But footy can be a fickle game, and now the boot's on the other foot.
Particularly when you meet young kids that are Demon supporters and their dads might introduce their son and say, "This is Jack's dad," So it's gone a full circle, but it's great.
But while Todd would desperately love a Melbourne premiership for Jack, it's others who aren't here to enjoy the occasion that are also in his thoughts.
Robbie Flower, who I was best man at his wedding, and Jimmy Steins, and he was number 11, I was number 12, and our careers overlapped, and I was sat next to him in the change rooms every training session. Sean White, another famous Irishman, died. Troy Broadbridge, of course, Dean Bailey, and Neil Danaher's plight with the MND.
Although there can still be emotion in football, Todd has no soft spot for the Dogs, except perhaps this one.
I've got a feeling he might stay up here.
Tony Jones, 9 News.
Now here is Tony with a look ahead to sport.
Good on you, Pete. Thanks very much for that. Well, 3 days out from the grand final. The nerves are settling in, Todd. And there's heightened anxiety in Perth as well after a COVID scare, no less. Here's Ed and Woolley.
Tony, a truck driver from New South Wales last week travelled through Western Australia before testing positive. There's several exposure sites in WA, including some in Perth, with the next 24 hours crucial in determining what impact, if any, it will have on the grand final. Health authorities have described it as a low-level risk. At this stage, they say there's no change to the way the game will be conducted in terms of crowds and so on, but certainly a few sleepless nights ahead for the AFL, who are certainly well aware of the risks of having the grand final, the biggest game of the year in a state known for locking down quickly. Tony?
All right, Ed and Woolley there live. Also in sport tonight, we've got all angles covered as the team shut their doors on their training sessions. And while Gus isn't feeling any pressure, Petrarca is getting a little jittery.
Oh, last time I laughed, I was excited. Probably the prelim.
Well, is this the new Carlton coach? The man who slipped quietly into town today? The Storm boys, a little jumpy ahead of their prelim. And the UFC star, not exactly pitch perfect. But who's going to tell him? And also Eddie Maguire will be joining us live as well, Pete, for the last time this footy season.
OK, thank you, Tony. Scott Morrison is on the charm offensive in New York, meeting several European leaders in the wake of his nuclear bombshell. An out-of-control four-wheel drive starts an incredible chain reaction. And Mick's touching tribute to Charlie as the Stones roll on.